This week, we welcome back to the show the one and only Camelia Elias, Tarot Queen Extraordinaire. Camelia, how have you been?
Well, thank you. Well, as a Zen person, I'm always fine.
Yeah,
So how's that for an answer? I've
that's
been
not bad. That's not bad. Now, what I've been doing with new guests on the show of late has been asking ChatGPT for their biography. And you've been on a few times before, but I still did this. So I'm going to play it for people in case they're unfamiliar with you, because
okay.
it's not bad. I don't think it captures your personality, let's say. We can't expect much from the robot yet. All right. As of my last training data in September 2021, Camelia Elias is a well-known tarot reader, writer, and scholar originally from Romania. Elias has lived in Denmark for many years, where she was a professor at Roskilde University. She has a PhD in American Studies and has published several academic books and articles. Several. Her academic work often focuses on literature, film, and cultural studies. She has written on topics such as postmodernism, the role of the outsider in literature, and magic and divination in contemporary culture. In addition to her academic work, Elias is known for her work with tarot. She offers tarot readings and teaches tarot courses, and she has written several books on the subject. Several. Her approach to tarot is directed and grounded, and she often emphasizes the use of common sense and clear sight over esoteric symbolism. Please note, for the most current and detailed information, it would be best to check her official website and her latest publications, which I've done. What do you think?
Well, actually, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
The AI missed one important thing. I'm very disappointed. It didn't mention my second doctorate. That's not good.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It also didn't mention Zen or swords or or any of that.
It's because with the degrees, although I don't know, within the European context, we have something that goes above the PhD, so we call it a Dr. Phil, So the Americans often they like to tease me and say, "Oh, the Dr. Phil, the show." And I'm like, well, almost. So, sometimes academics they go for that one, and they grill you a lot harder, and the process of getting it is also more complicated. But if you in Germany they call it a habilitation, so usually if you want to upgrade and go for the full professorship, then that's a sure ticket, so the AI they didn't mention that. So that's not good. All good
Good.
though.
Well,
Yes,
it's not wrong. When I first did mine for ChatGPT, it said I was a British woman, but otherwise got it right. So it thinks I'm trans.
but you know how it is, when we go and check this new thing there, I think that we fall for our own vanity, so of course, that if I have to, if I must, then I would like my vanity to be caressed. So then I expected to get it right, at least, so
Yeah, yeah. Yours is doing pretty good. It's just like I said, it's a little bit boring. It doesn't capture all the stuff we love about your work and your personality and so on. And it's
it
funny
is.
when I read them out, it feels like I noticed this last week. It feels like I'm reading it at a memorial service or a lifetime achievement award. It feels like, whoa, 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 I'm not done yet. I'm not. Stop giving me a biography. I still have things to do.
Yeah, yes, yes, yeah, exactly.
All right.
um yes, how does that work in a magical context? You know what they say, if you are done doing the thing that you are called to do, or or when your diamond is done with you, or you kind of lose contact with it, well, unless you're Bob Dylan or something, then you check out, right? so, so
It also, I'm
I can.
reminded, yeah, in the clerical underground, because there were historically too many priests for parishes, and they'd make money by doing things like performing Requiem Masses for people who were still alive as a form of cursing. And there's something
Yes.
about reading a Chat GPT biography that's like that. It's sort of, wait a minute, is this a eulogy? What what are you
Yes.
doing to me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well,
Nice one.
I think that to my knowledge, the Japanese, they like to have the funerals while the person is still alive, and they lie in the coffin, and then they have the obituaries and all the homages, and and I'm like, well, that makes perfect sense, because what use do you have from people's praising you or singing your praises and all that if you are not there to witness them? So again,
See, I think if I'm paying for the wine, I might as well be able to drink some of it. So
right, exactly.
I'm very into that idea.
That's it. So
Yeah.
so we are not so far removed from almost enacting the thing that the AI is now performing. So we are imitating the machine already.
All right. Well, so it did mention that you've written several books on tarot. I believe last count is 34. Is that right?
Well, I would say in all, yeah. That includes my academic work. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So 34 books in all, and
30, actually, I think I'm on number 36 now. So it's going
yeah,
on. Yeah.
right,
So, but with
a nice
yes,
astrological number.
half of the number is dedicated to the tarot, so yeah,
Excellent.
it's
Well,
getting
so my first question, and this was because I threw some cards to like find out what questions have I got on my list, or what have I not thought of to ask,
uh
and one of them was, what is your secret to writing so many books? Be specific.
Actually, it's very simple. First of all, uh I don't have any children. How's that for a starter? I have a partner who cooks, so I never have to worry about that. And I have great discipline, you know. And if I decide that I want, if I get an idea, and I like to be surprised, and I like to challenge myself, so I sit down, and then I just with my coffee and whatever in the morning, and then I think, I wonder what I can think of today. um, and then I just sit down, and then put down some thoughts. And often my books, the other secret is that my books, they start with the cover. I have an image of, or just, I mean, I don't even think about books. So in this series that you want to talk about, the cross falls under, the third one in line. It's already out, so I can even show it. We have the first one here. It was this one. Let me just the threads. These are the small books, the ones that take care of following the red thread, developing some idea, some technique. Yeah, as that these are pragmatic books. And then I have this one here, cross, and then the third one in line is choices. Now, if you look at this cover, I don't know if you can see it. This is an image. I shot it at the religious museum in Lemvi, a place not very far from where I live. So I stood there, and I see this huge granite table, made by an artist with some incredible incrustations and just etchings of sorts. Yeah. So I take a picture of it, and then I and then I look at my phone, as everything is done by phone, and I'm like, man, would this be a great cover for a book? So I come home, and then I put a nice filter on the thing. I love to play with the light, so I use filters. Yeah. So I mean, nothing's fancy. I never do any photoshopping, but I love filters. So I threw a filter on it, and then I just see suddenly some orange stuff coming through the mesh. Like the image looked like a mesh. And then I say, oh yeah, this looks, and then I get the idea, and I say, yes, I did think about writing a book about choices. So this sort of associative thinking. So my books also very much begin with some visuals. I shoot a picture, and then I think I would like to see this as on the cover, or I would like to see this as the cover of my next book or something. And then obviously I have to figure out the topic, and then because I am so impatient and I'm like, I need to see this image, then I just get down to it. And I don't suffer any disruption, or I hate any interruption. If it's like I have a dog, you might know Frigg, right? The big
Yep.
wolf. So I can't even suffer her around. If she just goes like this, then I give her the evil eye, right? And I'm like, hey, I'm working here. So so that's the secret. And then I can sit on my computer for hours on end, and then before I know it, it's just done. That's it. So no children. I don't cook. I'm a good cook if I have to, but I don't. When I work, I don't shop. I hate shopping. I don't. I only do internet shopping, so I just sit in the house, and then I don't answer the phone. I don't. My phone is forever on the silent mode. People are irritated with me. Often they say, "You never pick up the phone." I'm saying, "Send me an email if you want to get in touch." So that's the this. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. It's funny. So because I used a cross to ask that question, and that sounds about right. It was either that. It was either going to be, this is the nice interpretation of the cards I got. The other one would have been about cancellation. But the card, the what not to do, the card underneath at the bottom of the cross was the Emperor, and I'm like, she's going to mention Bent, so I won't mention Bent's input into your output.
Wow, wonderful.
So,
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Mm, very good
all
job.
right.
Yeah, so he has a great role because he does all the chores basically, so not so much the cleaning. I love to clean, so that's also an oddity, I clean the house, but I don't do it every day, not when I sit with a new book, so otherwise he asks me, so what would you like to eat for dinner, and then I'm like, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Not even
When,
whatever, so I'm like in the whatever mode, so I don't. Yeah, I'm not great fan, you see, so I'm a very solitary person in that sense. I've always been like this, I love my own company, I sit there and I look at the cards, and then I go to bands. My own sister used to say, you go to Jupiter, she says, like, I don't know why they got this idea that I would go to Jupiter of all places, It's just like I'm unapproachable. So they talk to me, but I'm not, that's not very polite of me, you see. So I'm not a good company. I go into my own world, and yeah. And I don't stop until the book is done, so that's that.
yeah, I think that's one of the secrets, because you have a capacity, maybe it's Zen stuff, that
Mm,
uh, I I know there's a cognitive limit. Uh, in theory, people can only spend, let's say, 2.5 hours on a task, a cognitive
mm,
task, before they're just exhausted. Like, I can't think anymore about this. I have to go and lie down and cry. It's all done.
yeah.
And if people have the capacity to get past that, then the world opens up.
Mm,
Otherwise, the game is to optimize how much can you do in that 2.5 hour or so chunk.
mm,
And
mm,
I feel that relentlessness in a good way in your books, where I think Camelia can go for more than 2.5 hours of creating. She can, if she gets a day to herself, she can write for a day, where most people can't. Most people are like, oh, no more. And I think that feels like it's a factor in the
yeah.
book.
Yeah. Well, obviously, physically, one does get exhausted, and
Yeah.
sometimes I do get to the point where I'm like, I'm so done, and then I'm ready for my samurai. I watch a samurai film every night. So I crash on the sofa or on the couch. But before I get to that point, I tend not to think about time, rest, because conceptually, or maybe I have done that thinking about what time is, before. And it became part of my own mindset. It's like, what is time anyway? It doesn't exist. So I just sit there with whatever I find exciting, and for as long as that train of thought, or if I, speaking of threads, I like to follow a thread, and I have a knack for detective, maybe not so much detective stories. I used to read them, when I was a teenager. That was my favorite genre. I used to read detective stories, but just the idea of, it's like you find something and then you absolutely have to turn it on all its facets, and even those that you can't see, then you develop an obsession with, there must be another one. So it's like, where is this other dimension, so I'm always curious about that facet to a thing that I can't necessarily immediately see. So although, you know to begin with, you're just spontaneously approaching a subject, or a topic, or I don't speculate. I'm not the type who sits there and takes notes on end, or if I read something, or I sit at the computer and then I already have an idea, and then if somebody just sends me an email, or if I just happen to scroll through my Instagram account or my Facebook account or whatever social media, and then I see a meme or something, and then it instantly sends me somewhere, so I work a lot with the associative, but I try not to lose sight of where I want to end up, or I often have a fairly good notion of what I want to achieve, and that is what ensures that I end up making a point, or at least I like to fancy the idea that I don't just talk nonsense. But that at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I did remember to make a point. I say to myself, what was the point here? Oh, I always try to when I let myself be inspired, then I think, okay, so what, so I often think like I sound like Andy Warhol, that was his favorite, like, so what, always, mind you, that's also very much a Zen approach to everything, it's like whatever is being thrown at you, like you just go like, so what, and then you take it from there. But at the end of the day, when you put all these so what's together, somewhere I like the idea of having a direction, So where are you going with this? Are you going somewhere with this, or are you just wasting your own time? And what's worse, other people's time. And since I cherish my own time, even though I don't believe in it, as a concept, I try to think of other people's time. So I try to think, okay, so how would they be wasting their time reading this, and if I decide that, yeah, that's a goddamn waste, then I either chuck it, or I rethink, or I try a new hypothesis, so that's my modus operandi. Yeah.
Next question I asked the cards to ask you was, how often do you use pip cards in your reading these days?
Well, I use them every day, actually. Just yesterday, I had a 9 card reading on my Instagram, so people like, oh, you read with the pips? And I'm like, yeah, like all the time. But it's true that most of my examples in the books that I put out there, they um, rely heavily on the 3 card spread, just with the trumps, if we're talking about Marseille Tarot. So I don't read with the trump with the pip card so much, although every one of my books will have examples of layouts where I engage the pip cards. So actually, now I'm lying, with the exception of what is not, the Marseille Tarot a la carte, where I just deconstruct our cherished beliefs about so-called archetypes, so I didn't think that I needed to engage the pip cards for that one, but all the other books will have examples, but in my own work, if I don't do it for clients, then for myself, just for fun, I always have the full deck next to me, and I do it. I read the pips, I like the pips because they give you they anchor you, so they and I look at the suits as modalities to either punctuate or a sentence, or concretize, so what are we dealing with here, it's are we up or are we down, so the pips are very good at that. Or are we with expansion or contraction, if we go from 1 to 10, it's just the basic principles of reading the pips. That is to say, when we don't look at them from a strictly symbolical or esoteric, as it were, which I'm not very fond of, point of view. On the other hand, because I have access to that vocabulary, so I would be remiss if I would say that I never use that. I do, obviously. Nobody escapes the symbolic order of things. So, so I would be full of shit if I said no. I never looked at the cards and I don't never regard that as symbolism. There is always something there that we convene upon, So I draw on that as well, but I don't turn that into my main thing, So, but the court cards also, I like to look at the agentic power or the agency, that the court cards, they give me access to, like who's doing what to whom, so they can be very clear insofar as the court cards always represent other people, so that I don't see them as manifestations or of myself, or I mean, yeah.
All right. So when you're doing readings for clients, is it you have one full Marseille and one Trumps only Marseille? Is that, and then it's depending on the question and how you're feeling, or is it with client work you're always going to use a full deck?
Well, it depends on the question. So if
Yeah.
if I look at the question and I say, okay, this question, it would be beneficial for both of us, myself and the sitter, to engage the full deck, and then I just do it like that. If not, then I go French, as it were, like in the French tradition, you use the trumps, but if you have follow-up questions or questions that you need some clarification for, then I just pull two extra cards from the full deck, and then I just use them as anchors, those pip cards. But to begin with, I just start with the three card set, uh, and that's that. That is to say the trumps, not the full deck. Yeah. But I do have situations when I begin with the full deck. But it's always context situated. So it's very much dependent on the question.
Very cool.
And how involved the question is, or so yeah.
So before we get to Cross, I want to talk to you about a recent yet earlier book, Andromalius Take Two, which I actually read on a ferry in the Philippines coming back from an island of the witches, and I thought you'd like that. I was on this very
Yeah.
unair-conditioned ferry with nothing to do, going to an island of the witches, and I'm like, oh yeah, the new one's out, and I managed to get with my Filipino sim. I managed to buy the Kindle version, so I'm there on this unair conditioned ferry reading it on my phone. I was in the island of the witches, and I'm like, I should tell Camelia. She'll probably like that. Yeah.
Yes, I do like that.
So
Thank you.
one of the things, there's a line in it that I thought was very, very good, which is that the book is, let me get this right, it's a treatise on occult style. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about occult style as it can pertain to calling up spirits, calling up demons, and so
Mhm.
on. I think that's a
Mm.
really
Yeah,
fruitful area to discuss.
yeah. Well, you know what what I was when I sometimes people ask me, or they say, so are you a cartomancer, or are you a literature person, like an academic, or are you an occultist? And then I want to say, well, yes, each and one of them, and yet none of the above, However, when I have to say something about occultism, then I always explain it by bringing in this notion of adopting a particular style, because when we talk about conjurations, or when we talk about the grimoires, insofar as we have so many sources, that we can go to, or that we rely on, and that range is you go from shamanism or some more archaic modes of invoking spirits, if let's call them spirits, right, to more modern ceremonial magic setups and circles. um, I find that regardless of the setting, we always talk about performance. So there is always a performance that you have to go through. It's like we say, we have to go through the motions, and I try to think about, well, what does that mean? That we go through the motions. What are these motions? So the reason why I talked about the cultism as a and stylistics, or I lump them together. It's simply because it enhances my awareness exactly of the performative that goes into all of these rituals, if you like. Although with the Andromalius book, so I do go through the more traditional approaches, grimoire style, or Solomonic conjurations. Traditional, I don't know, they're fairly modern. But then I also like the more ad hoc approaches, where you just, again, I sit at the morning table and say, "Hey, so Andromalius, so what's up with you?" I have sigils, or I have different cards, for instance, with the Goetic spirit sigils on them, and I just like turn them up, and then I'm looking, okay, so who is with me this morning, and so I for that so I ne- and I never think about it, and I never. Some people, let's just put it this other way. Some people say, "Aren't you afraid?" You just have all the sigils, or the seals, the demon seals, all in sight, on your kitchen table. And I'm like, well, no, I'm Zen, right? And then I have to go the other way and then explain what that means, and what that does to my own understanding of this whole pandemonium, or this whole catalog of so-called spirits, and so, but I just like to think of it as a mode of approaching whatever it is that is in front of us. If it's with this microphone here, I can think of it as being filled with the a spirit, right? I mean, it transmits my voice, whatever uh, it consists of today. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Over to you. How much more magic can it get? And then I can just so I can approach this world of looking at all the stuff that surrounds me from a particular um, awareness point. Let me put it that way. So, and as soon as I think of it in those terms, then I'm right there with stylistics. I'm right there with an appreciation of what it means to move about in the world, even though right now we're talking about this limited space. So it makes no difference whether we talk about our own domestic private sphere, or whether we talk about the larger public space that we can also um, um, take, or uh, enrich, let's put it that way, with our own presence. um, use our breath in that space. So it's in that sense that I thought about what I was doing with Andromalius and the Goetic spirits. It's like, why not think of it as a well, I don't know did I, if I managed to convey that idea, that when we talk about the grimoires, we might as well think of them as treatises on style, of style, and then on style as well, if we think of it from a meta dimension.
Yeah, and there's a lot to sit with there, because they are, well, there's a lot of insight that uncovers or unpacks when you bring something like performance theory, aesthetics, an understanding of style to it, because it historically situated, that's what was going on there as well. I remember being a kid, I don't know, 13 or 14, messing about with neo-paganism stuff that I'd learned on dial-up internet back in the day, and a couple of Llewellyn books.
Mm.
And so I tried a few ceremonies outside, like in quiet corners of parks or whatever. And it wasn't that satisfactory. And then a friend of mine who was also messing with it, he lived in what's an old house for Australia. It was about 150 years old, and I grew up in the second oldest European settlement in Australia. So old house, old part of town. And his parents were away. So we decided we'll do the next ceremony in his mother's drawing room, basically. It's old and antiques and so on. And we put the candles down in antique candle holders, and I think we used some of her potpourri or whatever on the floor. And I looked from the corner of the room, and it looked like the most witchy thing I'd ever seen. And I was in love. Like it was the aesthetic of, this is what it's supposed to look like. But it is for me. Like that's what it's supposed to look like. And that's kind of historically true when you look at what's required in the grimoires. There are style requirements. It has a style guide. That's what the
Exactly.
first third. That's what the first third of a grimoire is a style guide. If you are going to do this performance, these are
Mm.
the things, and the way you situate yourself. And that, sitting with Andromalius, was very useful for me, because I actually really like the early modern grimoire aesthetics. The one I don't like is the 19th century. I don't like the Golden Dawn silly painted wands and all the rest of it. And the fake Egyptian stuff. I don't like it. So,
Mm.
and that's fine. Like it's a style thing that I'm not resonant with. And reading Andromalius was really useful to go, okay, as you say, there's a meta position to
Mm.
take
Mm.
on grimoires through time, that
Mm.
even if you aren't the sort of person to sit there with a coffee and call up Andromalius, you're
Mm.
still going to learn, you're still going to get some insight into style and performance, I think.
Mm, mm. Yeah, absolutely. But then there is also a difference, you see, because I mean, as with all stylistics, how do you determine what genre you want to work with or within, or you want to write within? So there are always some guiding rules, at least, so you can transgress those, and we do that all the time, but at the same time, unless you actually abide by some basics, no one is going to recognize what the hell you're doing. So obviously, there is that we are already bound, let's just say, by the constraints of the circumstantial, or should I call it the incidental? I don't even know which one it is. Um, but there is a difference between doing the thing, as it were, when you are alone, and then you perform it in the privacy of your own four walls, nobody else sees you. Well, let the spirits will see. um, or when you are in a circle with others, and I have been in various circles with people, and that it's a thing of beauty when it's well done. And when people are, let's just say, professional about it, like they walk with a sure step, so that there is no they just know their stuff, and they're masters, and I'm always thoroughly seduced whenever I sit in the presence of masters. I'm just like, yes, I'm in love, and that can be a thing of beauty. And if the circle is the context, then I'm very appreciative of all that dressing up, for instance. um, Making sure that your inks are the appropriate ones, that your incense, that the smells are the right ones, so that we don't repel one another, since we are there together with other people. So all of that stuff, so I think it makes a great difference, from what you perform when you are in a setting like that, and then what you perform when you are just, yeah, like I said, sitting at your morning table, though I always have fountain pens, and different inks. And I like to doodle, even as I have my coffee, I always doodle something. I always jot something down. So already there, there is a kind of a flow. And I see the way in which the ink, appears on the paper. I'm very sensitive to what kind of papers I use, their absorbing capacity. Some are luscious, some are very rough. There's so many wonderful papers these days. So I sit there, and then I see already that even though I don't have any intention to dress up or consider everybody else that I may sit with otherwise, if the setting was called a magical circle, uh, I still see that the aesthetics, that there is always some kind of an aesthetics that has the potential to arise or become a piece of art, just or sigilizing without necessarily thinking beforehand about a particular intent that you want to work with, and the formal constraints, let's put it that way. So I'm very interested in what happens when we approach these workings, from both a very formalized point of view or a setting, and then from the less formal, because that style is always present, there is always a full stop, or there is always an emphasis, there is always a hyperbole I can go to, there is always an ellipsis, so speaking of all the markers in punctuation markers, in writing, since well that, so I see manifestations of these punctuations, in just about everything that we do. And then I want to, and I like to notice, because it's all about how you kick your awareness to the higher level, if you like, and I like to notice what kind of response I get, if I just employ a tone, even if it's in writing, that goes down, for instance, that what kind of gravitas, am I working with, or if the pitch goes up, so then I want to know what kind of response do I get, in terms of the atmosphere? Does it change? Or something in a circle setting, magical, some people talk about, oh, the temperature drops, or, or if you do necromantic work, whatever, you have all these testimonials or all these experiences that others share. And then people talk about it, the Ouija board, say, oh, the temperature dropped. So obviously now it must be, you must pay attention, because something is going to happen, or the lights are going to flicker, or the Armageddon is coming, or whatever, so what happens? So maybe nothing happens, but at the same time something does happen all the time, because things change, and we live in this stream of that we call impermanence. Things change all the time. So our own cells in our bodies change even as we speak or as we breathe, right? So what of that? So how do we notice these things? I don't know. So I like to think of our way of noticing these things as part of that stylistics manual, that we can make
Yeah.
or turn into something that's very elaborate, or just leave it on the level where it's all basics. However, it will be there, and it's like, your book of shadows, it's like a manual of recipes, yeah.
So follow up to that, because I really like that, is especially for the people who ask you if you're concerned about having Goetic symbols on your kitchen table. What are demons, and why Andromalius?
Ah, that yeah, that's a hmm. I don't even know how to answer that. um, yeah. Well, it's, we have, because of mythologies, we have the stories, and I'm a storyteller, or I like to think I'm a storyteller. So I like all the stories that that give us access to that which is not so conventional, that which helps us to deconstruct what we take as a naturalized state, and the whole business of reading like the devil is also part of my appreciation of what we do with demons, and the way in which is called we put them to work. In other words, we want them to do our bidding, as it were, whenever we actually try to break out of the conventional, or I don't know. I like to think of the demonic, if you as as the kind of power, that enables us to get in touch maybe with what we are at the creative level, that is not sanctioned, necessarily by the larger society or by our immediate family, so in what ways can we be creative, creative in the sense that suddenly we sit there with an appreciation of what comes out of ourselves and our work, that is not a mere expression of the narcissistic ego, so I don't say just the ego, because that's a good thing to have, I mean, that's our drive, but the narcissistic ego, so when we put some work out there that's not the result of that, then you realize that actually that's the work of your demonic creative power, because that is the only thing that has not been contaminated, if you like, by all the injunctions like thou shall not kill your neighbor, or all the 10 commandments, so I like to think of the demons being very good at transacting or negotiating with them commandments, or mm, yeah, cheating, finding ways of going around the commandments. I mean, the
Yeah.
commandments are there because that's and that is also what enables us to live decently, if you like, so we don't go and kill one another, or I don't go and kill my neighbor because it just happened to irritate me or whatever, so uh and we abide by the law, and but then there are states, that you say like, man, I just want to be free of all that.
Yeah.
So who's going to help you there, so maybe the demons are, so you call on the demons to do some kind of work that you wouldn't perhaps necessarily do. Now, when that is said, mm, I think in the Andromalius book, and then that was also an essay that I actually ended up editing, that came out in the Anathema book, the pillars, um, the scalding of sapientia, so the portion on Lucifer. So I had some fun writing that, because when I was, and I tell the story there, because when I was 3 or so, maybe even less, um, we have in Romania our Shakespearean bard, if you like, a romantic poet, Mihail Eminescu. So he wrote this long epic poem. It's like 98 verses, rhyming, say, were there with the 1800s, late 1800s. So and it's called Lucifer, so so, and it's like one of the classic Romanian most celebrated poems. And my parents like to teach me verses, and then because I had a good brain back then, I don't know, it has gone down since then. So they were very proud that that I could recite by heart, the whole thing, right? And well, that could take a while, because as I said, 98 verses, right? And then we would have guests, and then we would enact these seances almost, so I still remember very vividly, because it went on for a couple of years actually, so lucky I had good memory back then. So they would send me to the back of the room, and then we had this door that we didn't use very often, and that was like the stage, so they would send me back there, and then everyone would take a seat, at some considerable distance from where I was standing, and then off I had to go reciting the Lucifer thing. And it's the whole thing is a conjuration, it's a conjuration of Lucifer. So when people say and some ask me also, so you made the pact with Lucifer? And I said, well, actually, I don't even know. Oh well, some things you don't disclose, because why should I? Well, why should I? But among the arsenal of things that I don't mind talking about, this is the one example. When I say that you start out in life, as it were, reciting poetry, and the first long epic poem that I could ever do or perform was an invocation of Lucifer. So maybe that shit messed with my mind already back then, so I have no idea, and how I went from there to Andromalius, to be honest, I don't even know exactly why the hell Andromalius, but it was just one of those things that it kind of presents itself to you, and then I had some episodes with the postal service, so I'm a very impatient person, and I hate everything that's sloppy. I hate myself when I go sloppy, and I have enough plenty moments, and I try to correct that whenever I catch myself doing anything sloppy. But I tend to be quite merciless, with the sloppy. So if I stumble over it, then my swords are out. So I think that um, well, I had some episodes with the postal service. They failed to deliver, and then I was kind of like so fed up with them. And then I thought, I'm so going to enlist a demon to fix the shit for me. Uh, and then I started like working, as they say, the Andromalius, and then I got some very good results. And then I thought about the ways in which Andromalius got to be included, because when we talk about the earlier grimoires, we don't have any such entity called Andromalius. This is like a modern thing, or at the same time we have, as I also wrote in the book, we have these records, back from the 1700s, and people would refer to Andrew Malchus or Andromalus, these names, yeah, that one could easily associate and say that these names are the precursors, to what we now take to be Andromalius. So I was fascinated with these stories, and I thought, well, what kind of spirit is this, or what and then I don't know. Speaking of stylistics, I loved Andromalius seal, So when I look at it, man, that's
Also a lovely word. Like I remember reading the Goetia as a kid, that same era, and
yeah.
Andromalius. It sounds like what a demon's supposed to sound like. It's a lovely word as well.
Yeah, the evil man,
Yeah.
Andromalus. Yeah, so who's to? I mean, we laugh at all these puns, but I mean, Shakespeare was a master at it. Um, and there's a tradition, at least with the British, for how how names they become more magical than than they are even intended, or there is always a double or a triple meaning behind what you see, and how we construct these names, so it's all very fascinating. So I didn't know. So and then I just thought, that being now, at least if we convene now, say there's number 72nd, right? So there's 72. So it's like the last demon in the key of Solomon, in the Lemegeton there. And then I thought, you know how it is with the circles, so what ends also begins, and who's the beginning? And I thought, well, I kind of like the idea of Andromalus or Andromalius, being on a par with Lucifer, at least that was the story that I tried to push there. And then I thought, okay, I'm gonna tell the story and I'm gonna stick to it.
See that, because you mentioned Jake Stratton Kent in the book, and he and I would chat. This is years ago now. I was still in London, about Andromalius, and for people like Andrew Malchus, evil man, bad man. There's an etymology that gets us to the name of this demon. And so
Yeah.
we were talking about him being. We're talking about UFOs, actually. So we were talking about the black man at the Sabbat, which we see in the British witch trials. Of if they didn't want to say the devil, or if they didn't say we were going there to meet the devil, it would be the black man at the Sabbat. It's the
Mm.
devil, right?
Yeah.
And Jake and I were talking about that from a UFO perspective, because men in black are not actually humans. They're things that happen in these strange experiences that we call UFOs,
Mhm.
images or whatever. So we
Mm.
have Black Man of the Sabbath, we have Man in Black, both of which are somehow the devil, which is somehow Andromalius. So, and you mentioned Jake in the book. So I wanted to say that actually Jake and I have had a conversation similar to that, where Andromalius can be reasonably experienced as a form of the devil, as a form of a devil that you meet. It's like the black man at the Sabbath. So it was really really pleasant. Again, reading it on the ferry, going, oh, that's really cool. You're like, Andromalius is the last one of the 72. It's a circle. Obviously, it's some kind of Lucifer. And I thought I have to tell Camelia about the conversation Jake and I had about UFOs and the black man at the Sabbath.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also because, at least according to the description in the Goetia, we have this notion that Andromalius, unlike some of the others, appears in the form of a man, holding a snake in his. So there we go. Who's the snake? So let's go back to the Bible. So there are all these references, but then of course at the same time, is there any difference between? But maybe I shouldn't take up that discussion, because then someone said, oh, she's not a serious occultist, because she won't see any difference between Astaroth and Andromalius or Belial or some of the others, and then I'm like, no. What would the difference consist of? So I like to have that discussion sometimes with somebody, so it
Yeah,
all
well, that's
revolves
the
around,
Zen position anyway. What's the difference between anything and anything, and what
yeah,
does it matter?
yeah. So one of the points that I made in the book also is that a lot of what we make of, to answer your question, what is a demon? Is a demon is nothing other than what we expect, you know. So without a particular set expectations. When I say talk about set expectation, that means that there has to be some kind of a priori thought about it, So where you try to conceptualize some notions, there is no demonic world, So any kind of world, will be um, very much in congruence with your expectations, or rather, it can also be incongruent, that is to say disaligned, rather than aligned with what you expect. But nonetheless, there is always a premise of expectation. Without that premise of expectation, there is no working with anything. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
that brings it back to, I think, one of the favorite lines in the book, where I'm like, oh, I absolutely get what she's talking about now, which is no, but in a good way, because this is why I asked about what demons were, and we spoke about they're where you move into the unsanctioned, right? And what you just said there about difference in demons and what we bring to it, and our positionality. There's this line, as far as I'm concerned, I hunt after modalities of triangulating with my desires so that they acquire a form that's exciting.
Mm,
The very premise for articulating a desire follows the rules of thusness, for without specificity, there's no eureka, I found it.
mm,
So this to me is what you're just saying there, plus demons. And it's almost the argument for
mm,
this sort of work, which is you triangulate, you position,
mm,
your expectations plus demons,
mhm,
um, illuminates and emerges desires that may be invisible, otherwise unsanctioned.
mm,
And so there's there's a real power in it. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did. Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And there is a lot of um the thing about desire, I mean, and how we um with the positionality, there is something there that also fascinates me whenever, for instance, I situate myself vis-a-vis people about whom I often conclude, and say, "My God, that I can just see it. I mean, I don't have these visuals as such, but I see it because they either say something or they behave in a particular way, or they are restless, or there's something odd. Let's just say something odd about them." So I say, "My God, there's a whole legion of demons that goes through their whole body, so that they are like, their whole body is a vessel for for demonic forces, yeah." And whenever I would go like that, I'd catch myself and say, "Now, where did that come from?" What made me say that? And that actually goes back to my desire to, in fact, always identify the nature, if you like, of the ones that I encounter or have an encounter with, or I happen to have a discussion with, like my interlocutors. It's like, "So what are you all about?" And someone say, "Oh, I never want to talk to that woman." Some people sometimes say that to me, to my face. So I never want to talk to you, because you're always after these things. And I'm like, well, and I think some it's because it's related to my desire to not waste my time. So first of all, I'm curious about people, and then it's like I want to say, okay, so what are you all about? And then the next thing that happens is like, uh-huh, so are you a peaceful person, or do you have peace of mind? So I can instantly identify that. Or are you there with a lot of demons that you are not even aware of? So I stand there like in complete judgment. So I like to think that I'm the big judge. So I stand there in complete judgment. I mean, that doesn't mean to say I'm judgmental, because I mean, that would mean that I would have to go in and evaluate other people, and I don't have time for all that shit. So, but I do stand in judgment. And then I realized that a lot of it, this triangulation refers exactly to my appreciation of time. So it's like, I want to hear what you're made of. Are you interesting enough or not? Am I wasting my time? Or okay, so people can have all sorts of grievances, or if it is, and then if there is something I can do for them, then I can be open for that. Though if it's not my table to fix anybody's problems, then I so just run. So there is always an evaluation that is at work. It's part of the dynamic, part of the triangulate, the process of triangulating with my own desires to know about to what extent I spend my time efficiently or appropriately. So I notice, however, that whenever I do talk about people, and if I have a good reason to share my evaluation of the demonic content, let's put it that way, and then I say, I see that you're actually full of demons. And when I go like that I don't mean it in a good sense, yeah. So I mean it in the sense that I feel sorry for you. Do you even realize that? So if I have an incentive to say that or to go there, then I do it. So which already presupposes that I probably have a good relationship with the person. Otherwise I don't go around sharing sharing the sharing opinions. I'm not interested in that. So it's something beautiful happens when I do that, because then people get curious themselves, and then they all want to know, okay, so what kind of demonic forces do you identify, or and then we go and talk about states of possession, and some people are under constant possession. So, and I don't know, in another life maybe I was a Catholic priest or something, and performed nothing other than exorcisms. I don't know. Or I have a penchant for the ascetic life. So it's like I stand here, and I always like to think that I'm quite neutral in these matters, so so when I go and talk about demons, I'm not even sure where this discussion is going now. You can stop me. But when I talk about demons, I talk about demons also from um, a state of self-awareness, so without this, and I wouldn't even want to go there, to be honest, so in that state of self-awareness, what motivates my interest in the demonic is actually my own curiosity about the different kind of natures that I find that they come to expression. And and then, so I say, okay, so how do these demons mess with whatever it is that we that we have to deal with, or that we yeah.
See, I
So
think I think that's one of the implications of demons having legions, which you also write about,
yeah.
where I know you're not a fan of Jung, but go with me on this. Where let's say a demon um, represents or stands in for, instantiates a certain desire, you can encounter that, and suddenly it's a lot bigger than you realized it was. Like, whoa! And it's almost like experiencing trauma, where you
Mhm.
will. The one of the ways we can read the idea of a demon having legions is that when I triangulate with this demon, what this stands for in my personality and my desires,
Mm.
it's suddenly way bigger than I expected it to, and I might not be aware of it. It's like an awareness iceberg. So, oh goodness, I thought and I think again this comes back to why demonology, why grimoires, why do any of this stuff,
Yeah.
and it's that triangulation.
Yeah.
It's one of the ways. It's like pre-psychology psychology. It's a way of um, understanding that our awareness is patchy and limited,
Mm.
especially when it comes to ourselves,
Mm.
let alone others. And it's all kind of contained in this really evocative, stylistic um,
Mm.
mode, I guess.
Yeah. Well, ultimately for me, I think that what interests me is also this question: what the heck do we do with all this?
Yeah,
So it's like you identify the demons that are being channeled by people who are unaware, or often the ones who suffer from some mental issues. They I have come across plenty of those. That are mentally unstable people. There's lots of demonic force that they channel that they are not aware of at all. So it's like, say I identify that. So what do I do that? What do I do with that information? How does that help me in whatever it is that what agenda I happen to have that day? um, but again, it's like, if it's in a working setting, I mean, it can happen in the most mundane. I mean, this thing with the what's a demon? I mean, it's like, I think, who was it? Wasn't it Lon Milo Duquette also said? And I totally share that insight. It says demons are not. Go to your next bar and sit next to a drunkard there, and you're gonna see not just one but legions. Yeah, exactly that. Um, so, but at the end of the day, it's almost like, okay, so now I can see lots of demons, going up and down the spine of this person. So it's like, wow, you are so good. Now what's next? Are you going to exorcise her? And why? Who called you on the job? You have no business doing such things. Are you gonna run because you're afraid that some of it will be rubbing off on your good self, and that's not a good idea. That you come home with half of those demons that are being channeled by this mentally insane person, or whatever, or drunkard, or whatever, addicted people. I'm not saying this from any kind of, again, judgmental position, because again, I don't care about what people deal with. I really don't. I don't have time for it. So, but yeah, what do we do? So what do we do with these identifications, that we make, that we, however, also want to keep at a distance, because it's like with the cards. I'm always forever upset, let's put it that way, whenever I come across readers or people who insist, on identifying with the tarot trumps, or and it's like, no, they're not that for you to identify with. I mean, nobody gives a fuck about who you are in the tarot, whether you are the emperor, or do you are the popes, or what you are the hermit, or the hangman, or nobody cares about that. So, but we can identify what these figures do, so, and then we can try and see, okay, so is there a story here? Is it going anywhere? what uh, uh, what is my own role here? How do I
Mm.
perform in this story that I happen to just kind of drop in there, like if I sit next to the drunkard at the bar, who is channeling a legion, right? So how do we relate? So maybe I'm just more interested in that question, of how we relate to what we identify is the demonic power, so that is to say, when I'm not seeking it myself for my own gratification or for my own whatever it is, when I want to be at most creative, or and say, now I'm channeling my diamond, my good diamond, so that I can write the best books on the tarot, or whatever. So, how do we put? I mean, Solomon in that. I can totally get why people went to that legend. That Solomon, he had the project. You see, he didn't build the goddamn temple, and nobody could lift all these heavy stones, right? um so he had the project, he had work to do, so we're not there with these entities surrounding us, and we're just like in awe, and we're astonished, and we say, wow, I've just seen the ghosts. It's like the same thing with the psychics, so when they go, like, they identify a lot of things. At least we don't talk about identification one on one, where the person identifies with whatever they see. So at least we're spared there. But at the same time, is this thing going anywhere? What are we doing with this stuff? So is there a temple you build? So what's your project? So I'm sure that some will say, well, so much for your spontaneous approach to things. If you sound like a corporate kind of thing, who's always invested in projects, and but without a purpose. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Like, what is the purpose of what are we talking about? So I don't know. Give me a project, thank you. Give me a temple to build, and then, and then I know exactly how to delegate the goddamn force, and I say, you over here, you go over there, and you over here, you go over there, and some say, oh, you just want to dominate, you just want that power, and I will have to say, yeah, thank you. And it's, I mean, um
So that's actually a really good way, because one of the questions I want to ask about cross in particular, because we're talking about directions,
hmm,
and I'm trying to solve, like, why do we cross cards, and why is that so insightful? And just what you're talking about, their directionality, if you sit with what a crossroads is
hmm,
why we meet spirits there, or leave spirits there so they can't come back. It's a moment of, which way do we go? What's happening? Which is my project? East, south, north? What's my line? And there's
yes.
something about the cross in particular that is deeply old for humans. But like, why is that at the center, like the cross at the center of the cartomantic circle? What happens when we cross cards? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Hmm. Well, maybe it's related to the other cross that we call the X marks the spot, So it's also, we use the cross as a as a means to navigate, so we navigate by the cross, we navigate by the stars, of course, it's left to us to make that decision, the ultimate decision. If we stand at the crossroad, it's like, who's going to instruct us? Oh, yeah, depending on what demon follows you, you can say, okay, am I listening to the one to the left, or am I listening to the one to the right? So go left or right, or up or down, as it were. we need to make that decision. But at the same time, there is always an expectation that's tied to that decision, because it's like, whether we turn left or whether we turn right, we expect that something good will come out of it. So we always act on the presupposition that there is something good that's awaiting us. So this whole notion, that um of the good augur, the good augury, so we talk about in going way back, so it's very much related to that. So we use the cross, as a means maybe to access that part of the future that has to do with our anticipation of that which is good for us, because who the hell wants
Yeah.
anything that's bad for us? So so I think that that's the reason. Or now that I think about it, I haven't thought about it as such, but right now it strikes me that that may be the reason why the cross has been so celebrated. That is to say, apart from all the other mythologies that we have connected to them, the cardinal points, and the crossroads, and I mean, you name it, there is the list is long, on
Yeah.
the
Cardinal
various.
points are still, that's still X marks the spot. So it's still there, right? Because cardinal points are you situating yourself in the context of all things. Like
Yeah,
I'm here. So it's still like X marks the spot.
yeah,
That it's
exactly.
still that um, moment of awareness, like bam,
Yeah.
And yeah, I like that. That's really cool. Did
Yeah,
you
and it's
know?
like, here lies the treasure, so it's like,
Yeah,
or else, as I said, in more abstract terms, here is the good thing that awaits me, here is here is the pearl, or here is the holy grail, what and then all the names we can come up with, so it has that function somewhere, that uh yeah, again, you go left or right, there is always that anticipation that you act on, that you hope anyway that will get you to the better place, so we always operate we don't operate with absolutes, we operate with
so how long? This is
comparison.
a question that, yeah, this is a question I want to know. How long after you decided you were going to do a book about the Cartomantic cross as part of this thread, it comes from an image, oh, I'm going to write a book about the cross. How long, how many seconds after that did you realize, oh, I'm going to have to write about the Celtic cross?
Well, I think, yeah, I thought, it's not that I mind it, and I actually have two examples of it.
Well, that's the, like, I really enjoyed the Devil's Celtic Cross part because I'm not a fan either for all the reasons that you're writing, and I'm like punching the air, going yes, yes. But it just seems I love the idea, but from like a French method. Obviously, is a 3-card spread, which turns into something extra powerful when you put one above and below, and you get this cross, which
Mm,
is like the workhorse of answering questions.
mm.
And so a cartomantic cross is an excellent idea for a book, except you do have to write about the Celtic cross somewhere in there,
Yeah.
right? And I really I loved it was a very good case for why there's not a lot of situations. Let's say it nicely. There's not a lot of situations where a Celtic cross is called for, I think. But I didn't know it was from the Crowley era. I thought it was
Yes.
earlier than that. I didn't realize those guys
No,
invented it too.
no, it's not at all. I mean, who was it? William Butler Yeats. He was so
Okay,
enamored
right.
in it. I mean, the whole group, they really used that, and they participated in creating it, or they pushed for it, and I mean, for general readings, when you don't have a specific question, so that is to say, like, if you employ the tarot with view to knowing, uh, we wish, but let's just go with that, something about ourselves, so if you are on the path of self-knowledge, to acquire self-knowledge, then the Celtic cross has proved to be immensely popular, because it has you at the center of everything, so, and I guess what, if people love to talk about anything at all, then it would be about themselves, you know. So and if they're a bit shy and they don't want to appear on any podcast, you know, then they sit there with the Celtic Cross, and then, you know, they enjoy a discussion with the cards about themselves, you know. So it's marvelous, you know. I mean, you never get bored, mind you. Every day you get to be somebody else, because, you know, with the new throw of cards, you'll have a new configuration of your so-called self. Now, so you read the cards in positions, you know. So the Celtic Cross lends itself beautifully to that project, you know. But as soon as we jump from the psychology of, or the project with self-knowledge or self-improvement, as soon as you go from that to fortune telling, you know, then we are there with the whole other different cross, you know. Then we're just with the three card, or we are with the, still, I mean, the French cross, however, that doesn't start with the three card, you know. So that is also an actual cross, just a five card cross, and that is also to an extent, or else the French cross is already part of the Celtic cross, you know, because you have the, this is me and this is the opposing force, as it were, you know, in the French cross. And then you have the resolving influence, the card above, and then the card below, that will represent an outcome or whatever. And then if you add the numerical value of the four cards on the table, you'll get to a synthesis card, you know. You put that in the middle, and that is the card that underlies the structure of whatever else you see happening there, the dynamics on the surface of the other cards. So it's all good, you know. So the French cross tends to give more specific answers, because you don't have so many agents in play, you know.
Yeah.
It's just you and an opposing force. And if the question, however, is about your boss or your mother or whoever, you know, then the opposing card will be a representative of that agent. Yeah. And then it's like the card on top of you, what can we do about the situation? What's the best thing to do? And then we get to this point, you know. So we don't have the contrasting do this and don't do that as concrete advice as we otherwise have in the other type of cross that I talked about. Now, but in the Celtic cross, you have the tower, as it was, the tower, you know, the line of four cards next to the five card cross. And that has to do with your own good self, that is not related to your past, your immediate past, your aspirations, your goals, your future, you know, like. So it is you and your environment, you and your fears, you and your hopes, you and your future, you know. So you have all of the stuff represented in that column of four cards, or is it five cards? And I don't use that cross very often, so now I even forget how many cards. So of course, insofar as the whole cross book employs actually positional readings, you know, I thought it would be very nasty of me to not acknowledge the very popular Celtic cross. And I was like, who would I go against if I would just leave this one out, you know? So, and in my own experience, a lot of people still want to swear to the Celtic cross. They want to use it. But, and then I would say I can use it myself, but it's useful only for general stuff.
Like it always, I remember it was obviously the first one I learned as a kid with my first couple of tarot decks. But it occurred to me at one point that this is basically a one-card spread with a lot of bullshit around it, because it just, the outcome is card number 10 at the top of the tower, and then it's like, well, what am I doing? What am I doing with all this other stuff? And that, what I think is so powerful in that chapter is you say it's actually not very good at answering questions, which is the business that you're in. Like, should I leave my husband? And suddenly you're giving someone a Celtic cross, and it's like, oh, well, the social attitudes around you are this, and it's like, what? We have a question to answer here, and it doesn't really, so you've got this. I don't like one card readings either. So it's a one card reading which I don't like, with a whole bunch of confusing, unnecessary stuff before it, which I also don't like. So there's just not really a lot to recommend it. And I think the point that was also well made in the chapter is, if it is so self-centric, so self-centered, then it's very bad at relationality. It's actually not good at, like, well, where is the husband in this spread? If you try to answer the question of, should I leave my husband with a Celtic cross, what position is the husband in? Where are they? Where are the other people who are involved?
That's right. Yeah. So I mean, unless one is a very good reader, or unless one is very good at keeping narratives apart, or like identifying who the hell is doing what to whom, one cannot read the Celtic Cross to any precision, So you will be shooting here and there, and you will be getting a lot of information, but how relevant would that all that information be to what you really want to know? So in my experience, you end up with a lot of stuff that is bound to remain unprocessed in relation to what you're after. So that's why I say never use the Celtic Cross if you have a very specific question, because you're going to be finding yourself lost in the woods, because you say, oh, and this is so interesting. Oh, and I have experienced readers who completely lose track of what they started out with, because suddenly there is this cluster here, and then they think, oh, this is so fascinating. I'm like, hey, you forgot already what you asked. So maybe it wasn't so important, since people are so forgetful, in the course of 5 minutes, so they already forgot, what they wanted to know. So maybe that's not so important then. So mind you, more power to them, going with their excitement. But I just don't see that excitement adding any kind of value to the final narrative, where we are trying to actually make a goddamn point. It's like, is this thing going somewhere or not? And so but if you are a good reader, and if you can keep the narratives apart, and then if you do have an eye for the essential, then you can actually perform some very interesting Celtic Cross readings. And in fact, my examples there, that are quite challenging in that sense. So I don't give people the easy thing without making them think about the challenging, and then I flip it, and I well, in my own style, I try to ridicule a little. I start with a bit of a ridicule, and say, now just listen to yourselves, I mean, if we were to go there, just listen to, this is so ridiculous. But then I don't just say that. I try to demonstrate why that is ridiculous and how we can make it better, why? Because at the end of the day, my aim is to simply get people to understand that when we read the cards, what we want is to get to some essential stuff, that really sits somewhere, or that hits right, below the navel, so that you feel the hara power, the Japanese would say, like you just feel it pulsating right there, so that you will not be in doubt as to which way to go. Speaking of, navigation, or if we talk about decisions that you need to make, or that is important to make, so left or right, well, or do I choose this one, or do I choose that one? So unless you can separate the totally inessential from the essential, then you will just be completely lost in the woods of the Celtic Cross. So yeah.
So we can say the Celtic Cross is definitely not the crossroads where we meet the devil.
Well, I don't know. Maybe one could meet the devil at the. One could ask the cards about it, So.
True. All right, I was trying to. Yeah, go on. No, I was trying to get the. I really like talking about the Andromalius book and Cross in the one show, because it's the devil at the crossroads. It's cartomantic crossroading with demons, and I thought it's been a really good combination. But I've kept you for way too long, Camelia. I would like to keep you for longer, but I've kept you for way too long. So
thank you.
yeah. So tell people what you got coming up, where they can find you, how many books you've written while we've been doing this recording, all of that.
Yes, people always want to know, but I like to think that I've always been writing, so I always write something. So I don't know. Although every day I lament and I'm like, maybe I did too many things. Who the hell wants to read all this? And then whenever I go like that, and I get somebody sending me some messages and telling me how much the stuff changed their lives, or and I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe I should keep doing it. And then, well, I also enjoy the occasional nasty comment. That I have to admit, yes, I kind of that amuses me too. So yeah, so I keep writing. I always have some, this thing here, the new thing here, the latest thing, the choices. So although I said these are supposed to be short books, so this hasn't launched yet, because with these small books here, I just like to play with the idea of the talismanic object. So I have a few of the paperbacks that I offer as talismanic objects, and I'm not ready yet because I have some observances to make, but it'll come out in the beginning of June. So I'm preparing the whole ritual, how to enable people to make better choices. Although there are, it's always some kind of fun with that. But people can find me, and I have my own website, CameliaElias.com. And then there is the AradiaAcademy.com, where I offer courses. It's been a while since I had a course now, but they're coming up. Lectures, there are some off-the-shelf lectures that can be found. What else? Oh yes, of course, Icon Press. The books. Damn it. Damn it. Icorna.press, not icornapress.com, icorna.press. That's the website, so people can see all the books that most of my books are published by Icon Press, and they are all available on Amazon. Also, Barnes and Nobles is my favorite. Amazon sometimes likes to claim that my books are out of stock or something. They have this set phrase they don't like. So people go to Barnes and Nobles, and then you get a delivery in 2 days, 3 days. So that's about it. But yeah, I still perform readings for clients, even though I always say I'm gonna drop that soon because I simply don't have time for it. So I prefer to do other things. Since I retired from my university professorship, I thought I was just going to have a quiet time, so but then I find myself working hard, working more, and I'm like, are you insane or something, so but as long as I have energy for it, I still perform readings for people if they're interested in some sophisticated takes. I hope that I can offer that. Or yeah, also to the point, speaking of precision. And then other than that, the courses at aradiacademy.com, and then icorna.press.
Wonderful. Well, it's been a fantastic chat. Definitely worth getting up at 5 a.m. for, that's for sure. And
well, I appreciate your dedication to all of this. But then you know that already. So, and thank you for your great work. Obviously, I always get every book that you put out there. I'm thoroughly amused, and I recommend them to everybody. Yeah, we are in a good club here. Demons or no demons.
well, I have to send you my Lenormand cards when they come out next month.
Yeah. So yeah.
Nice.
That's exciting.
Okay. Yeah. Well, once again, thank you so much for your time. Fantastic chat.
Well,
and we'll do it again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again. Thank you.